She burst into the kitchen like a commercial for happiness, coat half off, hair out of the bun she wore to interviews. "They picked me," she said, already at the fridge for the bottle of sparkling we never opened. "Full-time. Benefits. Start Monday." I slid the cutting board aside. "Good. Let's do it right. Steak and asparagus. I'll grill." "We should celebrate someplace nice," she grinned. "You're looking at nice." Ya tapped the counter. "I'm making dinner. You're picking the playlist, and we'll toast to you." She laughed, kissed me on the cheek, and bounced around like the floor was springs. I didn't know that job would be the beginning of the end. If I'd recognized how fast respect can bleed out, I would have counted the minutes that night. We ate late. She talked about their office, the corner windows, the energy. "People there are sharp," she said. "Hungry." "Sounds like your crowd," I told her. "Don't worry," she wagged a finger. "I'll still be home for dinner." "If you're not, we'll adjust," I shrugged. I'm a flexible man. If I'd known where it was headed, I would have moved a lot sooner. By the second week, home for dinner turned into text bubbles at 8:30. "Running late. Big push. Don't wait up." She walked in wired, tossed her heels by the door, and kept her phone face down like it suddenly had rights. "Rough day?" I asked, sliding her a plate I kept warm. She poked the asparagus with her fork. "You didn't have to cook. It's Tuesday. I didn't think it was a state secret. Can we not do this? I'm exhausted." "Do what?" I leaned on the island. "Ask how you're doing?" She stared at the counter. "It's just everything's new. Lots to learn. Don't make it about you." I asked one question. "You always do this," she said, not looking at me. "You're reading tone where there isn't any." "I'm reading a pattern. It's 2 weeks." "Patterns start somewhere," I answered. "Who's got you on the late shift?" "Everyone's on the late shift," she said, voice flat. "It's a culture thing. Names." She smirked. "Are you keeping score?" "I'm keeping track," I replied. "2 different sports." She rolled her eyes. "Relax. I'm just excited." "Good. Be excited. And next time, shoot me a heads up earlier than 8:30 so I don't cook for 2. She tilted her head. "Sorry," she said, quick as a receipt print. "I'll try." "Trying is good," I said. "It's not a substitute for doing." The plate stayed mostly full. She took her phone to the bathroom for a shower. When she came out, she had a towel and a smile. "Hey," she touched my shoulder. "I didn't mean to be sharp. New rhythm. Give me a week." "That's 1 week you owe me back?" I told her, half smiling. Her mouth softened. "I'll cook Friday," she said. "Deal. Deal." Friday came, and so did a meeting that ran over. I ate alone, threw her portion into containers, and moved our budget spreadsheet to a separate folder with my name on it. When she got home near 10, I was in the garage checking the air compressor. "You're not asleep?" she asked. "Had to adjust," I answered, tapping the gauge. "Since our meals aren't synced, I'm splitting groceries. I'll cover my stuff. You cover yours. I'm also moving our shared calendar invites. If you want me at something, put it on the board." Her eyebrows went up. "Are you serious?" "Adult serious. My time's not a waiting room. That's petty." "No, that's policy," I said. "Welcome to the new culture." "Wow." She blew a tiny laugh. "Okay, Captain Boundaries." "Boundaries keep ships off rocks," I said. "Good night." She walked off muttering that I was making drama out of nothing. I slept fine. The next morning she brewed coffee, slid a mug to me, and brushed a hand down my arm. "I was out of line," she said, softer than usual. "You're right. I'll add things to the calendar, and I'll text you before I leave at the office." "Good," I nodded. "And I'm cooking tonight," she added, almost playful. "No bailouts." She made pasta, set the table, lit a candle like we were in a catalog. It felt like a reset. Halfway through, her phone lit up with the name G, and the bubble preview flashed, then disappeared. She flipped the phone face down reflexively. My fort paused midair. "Who's G?" I asked. She twirled spaghetti. "My boss." First initial like a secret agent. It's how the team saves numbers. Shorthand. Is shorthand also why you smile at the notification like it's Christmas? She exhaled. "It's work stuff." He's witty. "It helps at 9 p.m. "Got it," I said, and took another bite. Witty keeps the lights on. The candle made her eyes look warmer than the room. She put her phone away, squeezed my wrist, and said, "Thank you for dinner. For everything. I'll get it balanced." I heard the apology. I noted the quick recovery. I set a reminder in my head to move further if it repeated. 2 days later, she came home buzzing again. We're doing a big launch party next Friday, she said, toeing off shoes. Partners, spouses, the works. Calendar it, Ya said. She blinked. I will. You'll come. Sure, I answered. You'll introduce me? Obviously, she laughed too quickly. It'll be fun. Fun's good, I added. Fun has a price. We show up together, we leave together. She made a face. It's not prom. Then it'll be easy. She shrugged. Fine. Fine didn't stick. The company event was at a downtown hotel ballroom with bad lighting and heavy hors d'oeuvres. She walked me in, already scanning for familiar faces, fingers tapping her clutch like she was keeping time to an internal track. There's the team, she said, pointing with her chin. 2 minutes. I'll introduce you. Let's do it, I said. We took 5 steps, and she floated, greeting 3 people at once. Someone called her name from across the room. 1SEC. She tossed over her shoulder and melted into a cluster of blazers. I stayed where she left me, near a plant and a tray of something that tasted like compressed crab. I watched her work the room. People leaned in when she spoke and laughed too hard at lines that weren't funny. G wasn't hard to spot. Mid-40s, expensive haircut, hands on his hips like every square foot belonged to him. He put his palm on her shoulder when he said something. Her head tipped toward him like a sunflower. 10 minutes stretched. I took a seat at a side table where the band would have been if they had won. A woman with a sharp bob and a calm face drifted over, carrying a club soda. Too loud for small talk? She asked, sliding into the chair across from me without asking permission. I'm good at noise, I said. I just don't know anyone, and my wife's doing laps. Ah, she smiled dry. Mine's the opposite. I usually have to drag myself around to prove I exist. You work with her? I asked. She held out a hand. Emily. Her shake was firm. Operations. You're? Jack, I said. I anchor the home front. Nice anchor, she smirked, eyeing my jacket. So, Jack, you also notice how our team's version of collaborate means pretend it's college again? I noticed the part where attention is currency, I replied. And some people are buying a lot. Her eyes flicked to my wife and G. Yeah, she said neutral. Some lines are more crowded than others. We talked. Not the weather kind. She asked what I did with my hands. I told her I run a small contracting crew. Fix houses that were built by people who thought drywall was optional. She laughed at the right places and argued about how people treat trades like a last call instead of a first call. She didn't fill silence with noise. I like that. At one point I checked my watch. I promised myself I wouldn't turn into a pumpkin here, I said. We should head out. Trade numbers? She asked, casual like she was asking for a lighter. In case you get stuck at another mixer and need someone who knows where they hide the decent snacks. Sure, I said, pulling out my phone. Insurance policy. She typed, then hesitated, thumb hovering. The look wasn't flirt, it was wait. You want to say something? I said, setting my phone down. Spit it out. For a second her expression carried something like regret. Then she pasted on a small smile. No, you're fine. I'm fine. It's all fine. She stood. Text if you need a laugh. I found my wife near the bar, surrounded. Clock's ticking, I told her. She blinked, feigning surprise. Already? You just got here. We came together, I reminded her. We're leaving together. She made her smile tight. Gee, wanted me to meet a vendor. 2 minutes. Add it to your calendar, I said, not moving. 5 minutes later, she peeled away, waving at 3 people and hugging 2. On the elevator, her mouth flattened into a straight line. So, I said, hitting the garage level. Thanks for the grand tour. What? She stared at the doors. You disappeared. It's called networking. It's called leaving your partner parked by a ficus. She scoffed. Please. You were fine. I saw you with Emily. You two looked cozy. Emily sat down and talked like a normal person. You didn't introduce me to anyone. Oh, so now I need permissions? She shot back. No, I answered. You need basic respect. Respect, she snorted. From a guy who makes everything a scoreboard. What exactly did I win tonight? I asked. She folded her arms. You got a new friend. Don't pretend you didn't enjoy it. Enjoyed having an actual conversation, I said. Your tone right now? Not on the list. We drove home with the kind of quiet that isn't peace, it's paperwork. In the driveway, I cut the engine and turned to her. You ditched me, I said. That's a one-time coupon. You're overreacting. No, I'm logging reality, I said. Here's my correction. I'm done with work events where I'm an accessory. If I'm invited, you host me. If you can't, I don't go. She stared out the windshield. You're punishing me. I'm exercising choice, I said. Different words. You're unbelievable. Sleep on it, I told her. She did more than sleep on it. She iced me out. 4 days of short answers and moving around me like we were roommates who split a hallway. No fights, just little presses of silence. I didn't chase. I shifted. After work, I hit the gym with my buddy Mark, grabbed burgers with Gabe and his wife, worked late at the shop to finish a backsplash that had been waiting. When my friends asked, I didn't dump. I gave the headlines. They joked about Emily, which I let slide back into the conversation like a coin into a slot. Cute, Mark asked, wiggling his eyebrows over a basket of fries. Smart, I said. Not what I asked. She's both. Doesn't matter. Sure, Mark grinned. Doesn't matter at all. I didn't defend it. I wasn't a monk. I was a married man who understood lines. What mattered was the line at home, and who kept stepping over it. On the 5th day, she did a small pivot. Came in earlier, set her keys down without slamming, put a pint of my favorite ice cream on the counter like an offering. Truce, she asked. I never declared war, I replied, but I slid the spoon toward her. I was touchy, she added. I get tunnel vision. It wasn't about you. It became about me when it hit me. I said, I'm not a coat rack. She nodded like she was agreeing with a podcast. Okay. Okay, lived for a week. Then the text got late again, and her phone lived face down again, lighting up with that neat little G. She laughed at his messages while telling me I was taking things too personally. I moved more of my life off our shared map. My paycheck went to a new account with my name. I told her rent and utilities would still be covered, and I handled them like a biller, not a husband. You're really doing this? She asked, staring at the email notice. I am, I said. Clarity helps. It's insulting. It's structure. She drew in a long breath. Whatever. Not whatever. Policy, I said. I don't chase moving targets. She left the room. 2 hours later, she returned with a movie queued up and popcorn in a bowl, trying the second version of Soft. She tucked her feet under her and leaned into me like we were 19. Halfway through the movie, she reached for my hand. You're my person, she said. I replied. I can be again. You're so literal, she smiled, big and bright. This week will be different. It was, until it wasn't. 3 weeks after the party, my phone lit up at 3 p.m. with a number I didn't recognize. Emily. We haven't texted, just one exchange for the insurance policy. Her message, we need to talk. I can't keep quiet. I stood by the truck at a job site, measuring tape in my hand, engine noise in the background. I typed back. I didn't know I had that effect on people. She answered, don't flatter yourself. It's not that. I thumbed. Not even a little. Pause. Then, I won't deny it. But this isn't about that. It's about your wife and my boss. Dinner tonight? I'll bring the receipts. For 2 minutes, I considered that it was a provocation. A test. Or maybe a warning dressed up as a flirt. Then I read it again. My stomach didn't drop. My mind got quiet. Quiet is where I make decisions. 6 o'clock. A diner with good coffee and no pretense. I was there early. Emily walked in a navy blouse and a face that wasn't playing games. She sat, put her phone on the table, and looked at me like we were about to sign a contract. Show me, I said. She opened a folder app with the tidy efficiency of someone who labels things. Photos. My wife in GS office, the kind of angle you only get if someone doesn't know you're standing there. They weren't doing anything you could take to a judge, but they didn't look like colleagues arguing over spreadsheets. Later shots, them leaving the building at lunch, hand in hand. A couple of after-hours frames in the lobby where bodies leaned closer than they should. Dates? I asked. She flicked through the timestamps. Weeks, she said. The calendar in my head lit like a slot machine. Late nights, movie truce, the ice cream olive branch. It lined up. You good? Emily asked, watching my face like a medic. I'm deciding what good looks like, I said. Send me everything. She shared the album. I watched the progress bar like it was a loading screen for a new level. When it dinged complete, I locked my phone. I'm sorry, she said. I should have told you earlier. I didn't know if it was my place. It's your courage, I answered. Place is mine. We ate because that's what people do when they need to borrow ordinary life for an hour. She talked about the office in careful nouns, pressure, lines, compromises. I told her about contracts, about how some people sign with a handshake and mean it more than others do with ink. You're calm, she noted, sipping coffee. Rage is messy, I said. I'm a tidy man. You sure you don't want to go blow it up now? She asked, voice steady but eyes searching. I won't step on my own toes, I told her. Dinner stays dinner. She exhaled, relieved, then embarrassed at the relief, which made it realer. I like talking to you, she said, a little surprised to hear it. I thought about you after the party, I answered plain. You're easy to be around. She laughed once. Same. We stayed until the waitress started flipping chairs on tables in the corner. In the parking lot, I walked her to her car because I'm not a different kind of man when I'm angry. She paused with her hand on the door. You're going to be okay, she said. I already am, I replied. Tomorrow I'll be better. At 7 the next morning, I drove Emily to work because her car had a warning light she didn't trust. We pulled up in front of their building, and there she was, my wife, standing outside with a coffee, scanning the lot. She spotted me, then spotted Emily, and it clicked like a hammer on steel. I knew it, she said, voice sharp enough to cut tile. You couldn't wait. I leaned an elbow on the steering wheel. Good morning. You're disgusting, she snapped. With her? Really? Emily's hand hovered over the door handle. I touched her wrist. Go ahead, I said quietly. If she causes trouble, show her what you showed me. Emily nodded once, like a soldier getting a simple order, then stepped out and walked toward the doors. My wife planted herself by the curb. Are you kidding me? No, I said. I'm done kidding anything. I'm filing, she threatened. Today, I'll take the house. You'll be sorry. File whatever you want, I replied. I'm filing my own paperwork this morning. We'll see what holds up. You think this little stunt with Emily will help you? It won't hurt me, I said. But it's not about help. It's about clarity. She turned red in that way that happens when people who need control feel it slide. You don't get to walk away clean. I do actually, I answered. Watch. I didn't hand her the photos. I didn't say her boss's name. I didn't throw a scene. I left her on that curb, walked back to my truck, and drove to an attorney's office where they talk like mechanics. I laid out the facts and forwarded the album. He didn't promise fireworks. He promised gravity. You're fine, he said. Document what you own. Change what you control. Keep it boring. Boring I could do. I went home, opened the spare room, and pulled her suitcases from the closet. I packed like a professional. Clothes, makeup bag, toiletries, her work laptop into its sleeve with a note that said, pick up window today 6 to 8. Call first. Then I called a locksmith. By 3, the front door had a new voice. I set the suitcases by the entry table and slid the deadbolt. By 4, I was asleep on the couch, the first real nap I'd had in months. When I woke, my phone was vibrating off the coffee table. Missed calls stacked like bricks. Messages piled up. Threats, guilt plays, weather reports of her mood. I read 3, learned nothing, and blocked the number. The world got quiet in a way that wasn't empty. It was mine. An hour later, there was pounding on the door and a chorus of "Open up." I let the doorbell sing. When it stopped, my inbox lit with a last email. You can't do this. I hit archive like it was a skeet target. At 6:45, Emily texted, You okay? Better, I wrote back. Any drama your way? She answered, she tried. I was polite. She didn't like polite. Good, I typed. Polite is underrated. The next morning, I woke to the same number calling from borrowed phones. I didn't answer any of them. I drove to work, then to the gym, then to Mark's garage where he pretends the world makes sense if the carburetor does. You look good, Mark observed, handing me a rag. What did you do? Cleaned house, I said. He grinned. Finally. Emily told me what was going on. I added, neutral. She's solid, he said. You going to? I'm going to finish one thing before starting another. I cut him off. I'm a contractor, remember? He raised his hands in surrender. Just saying. You look lighter. Lighter's the point, I said. 2 weeks later, Emily mentioned in an aside that my wife was no longer on the team. It was fast, she said, eyes steady. Office politics aren't kind to people who mix stories. I nodded. I didn't feel anything like triumph. I felt distance. Distance is healthy when things burn. We didn't talk about my wife much after that. Emily and I had our own sentences. We met after work, sometimes for tacos, and walked by the river like the city belonged to grown-ups who know what they want. I didn't push. She didn't either. We didn't need to. My wife tried different doors, mutual friends, her sister, a neighbor who stops me to comment on lawn care like it's a moral issue. I let the calls go to voicemail and responded to none. My attorney handled logistics. I handled the locks and the utilities and the quiet. The last time I saw her face to face was on the porch when she came to get the last box she'd forgotten she owned. She tried a final script. "You're making a mistake," she said. "You'll regret this." I held the door half open. "I regret not moving sooner. You think you're better than me." "I think I'm better without you," I said. "That's not the same thing. You can't erase what we had." "I'm not erasing," I replied. "I'm closing." She glared. "She'll leave you too." "If she does, I'll handle it before it handles me," I said. "Take your box. The clock's running." She lifted it, tried to shoulder past me, realized that wasn't going to happen, and settled for a look that's supposed to freeze a man in place. I stepped back, pointed to the sidewalk, and shut the door behind her. Inside, I leaned on the wall for one breath, then called Mark. "Beer on your porch?" I asked. "Always," he said. I drove over and sat on a folding chair while he adjusted a radio that only got 2 stations. He raised his chin. "Done?" he asked. "Done," I answered. "Official in a month." "And her?" "Moved on to her next plan," I said. "Not my business." "And Emily?" I shrugged. "We're talking." Mark smirked. "That's a word for it." "She's good company," I said. "I don't need anything else right now." "You might want it," he countered. "Maybe," I conceded. "Later." He nodded, like he knew something I'd figure out. Weeks passed. The final signatures printed and got mailed and came back stamped like library books. She sent one last email asking for another pass at the house. I let my attorney answer. The day the envelope arrived with the words, "Everyone waits for," I didn't pop anything or call anyone to brag. I changed the contact name to a number on a list I don't need anymore, and then I went to work. That weekend, Emily came by with a duffel because I'd offered the spare room while her building dealt with renovations that took 2 weeks, we promise, which is contractor for 2 months if you don't throw a fit. She stood in the doorway and looked around like she was measuring fit. "You sure?" she asked. I offered, I said. "I don't offer things I don't mean." She set the bag down. "You're not worried about appearances?" "I've outgrown that word," I answered. "We'll do it right. Slow. Clean." She smiled. "Slow I can do." We cooked that night on the same stove where I'd grilled steak the day it all started. She chopped without being asked and stacked the cutting board where I keep it because she looks when she doesn't know. After dinner, we played 2 rounds of a board game that had more rules than patience. I lost both and didn't mind. At some point, she leaned back in her chair. "He thought rules didn't apply to him," she said, meaning her old boss without saying his name. "People like that make their own gravity," I replied. "Until they don't." "You never asked me why I had those photos," she said. "I didn't need to," I answered. "You had them. You chose to use them right." She nodded. I kept hoping she'd stop. Or he would. Or it wouldn't be my problem. "It wasn't," I said. "It became your choice." She looked at me and didn't blink. "I like your choices." "Stick around," I said. "I've got more." In the months after, life got simple. The house felt bigger because the air did. My crew took on 2 projects that turned into word-of-mouth work. I traded in my truck for one with fewer miles and a bed that doesn't complain. Saturdays had a shape again. Hardware store, coffee, yard, friends. Sometimes a game on TV. Sometimes nothing but the kind of quiet that isn't empty at all. Emily slid into the space my life had for a partner because she fit, not because I carved it for her. She learned which drawer I keep the tape in and which chair is better for paying bills. She doesn't do theater. She brings me real questions, and she expects real answers. I give them. We don't pick over what happened. It's not a meal. It's a scar. Information, not identity. Every now and then someone mentions my ex through the grapevine. Rumor says she moved back to her parents' place in another state, then bounced to a friend's couch when pride and logistics wrestled. She sends the occasional, "Hope you're well," through third parties. I don't answer even indirectly. She made her choices. I made mine. One night, after we finished fixing a cabinet hinge that had squeaked since before I bought the place, Emily stood in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "You ever think about forever?" she asked, not coy, just straightforward. "Every day," I said. "With me?" She pushed, a little smile to break the weight. "I wouldn't have changed that hinge if I didn't," I replied. "That's a terrible metaphor," she laughed. "It's not a metaphor," I said. "It's logistics. Things that work stay working when you care for them." She stepped closer. "Then care for me," she said. "Already doing it," I answered. A month later, I drove to the jewelry store I trust, because the owner talks me out of dumb ideas. I picked a ring that wasn't loud and wasn't cheap. It was right. I put it in the glove box like a secret and waited until a Saturday morning when the light in our kitchen hit the table just so, and the coffee tasted like we made it on purpose. She was cutting fruit. I set the box next to the cutting board. She looked at it, then at me. "This is either a new tool or a proposal," she said. "Both," I told her. "I want to build a life with you." She didn't cry. She didn't jump. She smiled and said, "Yes," like we were signing a calm, serious agreement that we both wanted. Later, sitting on the back steps with our mugs, I thought about the beginning. About the night I grilled steak and believed promises. I don't regret being that man. I regret letting respect slide a day past the first sign. I won't do that again. If you hear anything in this story, hear this. You don't have to yell to draw a line. You don't have to break to be done. You change the locks. You change the calendar. You change who gets access to your time and your name. People will call it harsh because softness is easier to sell than rules. The last message I ever sent my ex was a sentence that closed the book. She tried a new number. She tried a different tone. She wrote, "We could talk. We had years." I typed back, "We had years. We don't have today." Then I deleted the thread, put my phone face down, not because it had rights, but because I do, and turned to the woman who sits at my table and laughs at my worst jokes. I poured us more coffee and slid the window open to let in a breeze that belonged to a house where respect lives. That's how you end it right, with a door that closes, a lock that turns, and a life that opens.